Okay, so the next stage involved in producing the results section for the lab report that accompanies the Wingate session is to carry out statistical testing of the data that you've produced. And we're going to do that in SPSS here. The first thing you want to do is tell the software that you're looking to type in some data. Unfortunately, we don't currently have the data set in an SPSS format. So select that you're going to type the data in, and this is what you'll be faced with. This is just a blank SPSS file here. What we really want to do is then just take the data from the Excel file that it's currently in, just copy it out of there, bring it over, and simply a case of pasting it over into SPSS here. You'll notice that you can't paste the titles in. I didn't select those in Excel. We need to enter those manually. In order to do that, you see down the bottom left hand corner here, we're currently in the Data View tab. If you select Variable View, this is what you'll see, and the first row, the name, that's basically telling us what name we want to be allocated to each of the variables. So it's just a case of labelling this up the same way they were labelled in Excel. So type subject into the first one, followed by age, gender, height, and weight. Then we're on to peak power. Now SPSS doesn't like you entering a space or certain special characters, so if you're wanting to separate two words, the best thing to do is a sort of underscore. Pop that in there and it will accept that. So peak power, and it's mean power, and finally the fatigue index. And then if you click back to data view, you should see that along the top there, these columns are all labelled up exactly as they were in the Excel file. The only other thing I'll point out here, because the gender column isn't using numerical values, we've got letters in there to denote the gender of the participants. What you probably want to do is just pop back onto the variable view for a minute, and then in this gender row here, if we pop into the values, we can actually tell it what these letters are standing for. You can pop an F in there and tell it that's a female, and then add it, and basically do the same for the males. Just stick it in there. It's just good practice. When you get your output, you'll be able to clearly identify which are males and females. So back to the data view. For the purposes of this tutorial at the moment, I'm going to assume that you've actually checked the normality of the data. There's something you really need to do when you're carrying out statistical tests, is make sure that your data meets the assumptions of that test. If you want to see how that's done, there are further videos that you can access via the Moodle that directed you here in the first place. But for now we're just going to press on, and we're going to carry out an independent t-test to see whether the differences between the males and the females are actually statistically significant. So what you need to do is pop up here to Analyse, and then select Compare Means, and down to the Independent Samples t-test. And then on the left hand side, this basically shows you all the variables that we've put in here. So we're looking to investigate whether the differences in peak power, mean power and fatigue index are significant. So we'll just pop all of those over into here. That's the test variable. And then down here we've got the grouping variable. That's the group that we're looking for differences in. So that's gender. And we'll pop that in, and it just asks you to define the groups. Click on this. Group 1 will be F and group 2 M. Order doesn't really matter, as long as it corresponds to what you've entered in this column here. The software will know which values it's looking for differences in. Continue, and then click OK. And that's us now run the test, and this is the output that we get here. We get this first box, group statistics, and this is really just giving us the values, the mean values, standard deviations, and the number of people within each group. So we can see there were 15 females and 38 male participants in the data set that we've used, and then it spits out the mean values and the standard deviations for each of the three variables that we're interested in. But what we really want to know to find out whether there's a significant difference is contained down in this independent samples test box. The first thing we need to check is this bit here, Levene's test for equality of variances. There's another assumption of the independent samples test, is that the variation occurring in each group is equal. Basically, if your value in here is greater than 0.05, then we can assume there are equal degrees of variation occurring in each group, and we therefore just read along this top column in each box. Now what we're looking for is the value in here, in the significance box. And we can see that the value there is 0. Anything less than 0.05 tells us that the difference is significant, and that's the case for all of these. So for peak power, mean power and the fatigue index, we can quite clearly see that the difference in the values up here is actually significant, and that's all we're really looking to do at this stage in the test. So that's the statistical testing part of your results completed.